Hello, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to our Bridge Artist in Residence How to Apply info session. We're really grateful that you decided to join us and were able to attend. Just a reminder, we are recording this session and it will be available after it completes, as soon as we're able to get it up online. So without further ado, we're just gonna hop right into our presentation. Just give me a second to screen share. All right. So welcome one and all to our Bridge Artist in Residence Digital Data Visualization How to Apply Information session. Wow. We are the City of Seattle Office of Arts and Culture. My name is Jeremy Beliveau. I am joined today by Maya McKnight. We are both project managers for the public art wing of the Office of Arts and Culture. I want to first start off by reminding everyone that the Seattle Office of Arts and Culture commits to an anti-racist work practice that centers the creativity and leadership of people of color, those most impacted by structural racism, to move toward systems that benefit us all. We also acknowledge that we occupy the traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples, whose ancestors resided here since time immemorial. This acknowledgement does not take the place of authentic relationships with Indigenous communities, however, who are still very much here. And just a brief overview of what we'll be doing today. We just completed our introductions. We'll jump right in to talk about the history of the residency and its background. Then we'll start talking about this year's program, followed by an overview of the submittable platform for the application with some general application tips. And then we'll be taking some questions at the very end. So without further ado, Maya's going to take us away about the residency history and background.
Great. Thank you, Jeremy. And thank you everyone for attending tonight. Yeah, so excited to be part of a small part of this project this year. I wanted to provide a little bit of context and background about how the history of it and how it kind of came into formation. Way back in 2005, we actually commissioned Lead Pencil Studio to create an art plan for SDOT, Seattle Department of Transportation. So they took a deep dive into SDOT sites, location, different capital projects coming up, and identified different bridges that had areas that could potentially host an artist in residence. Then moving forward, Jeremy, if you wouldn't mind, specifically, two locations were identified, one being the Fremont Bridge. The Fremont Bridge is a historic bridge built in 1917. It's a bastille bridge, which indicates how it opens. And the residency area is in the northwest corner of the space. Next slide, please. The space itself is relatively small. It has about 2 desks or 2 tables and is surrounded on all 4 sides by windows. As mentioned, it's in one of the bridge towers. Catty corner is where the bridge operator works on a day-to-day basis, opening and closing the bridge. Next slide. The other location is in the University Bridge, similarly a historic bridge. This bridge was built in 1919. The artist residency space is on the southeast corner. Similarly, next slide, the space also surrounded on all sides by windows is slightly larger than the Fremont space. It has several different workspaces, flat surfaces, as well as a bathroom that's accessible, where the Fremont one does not have a bathroom. Next slide. So since origination of kind of the idea in 2005, we've hosted several different artists in residencies with a real focus on kind of changing the medium and the artistic output for each year. The very first artist in residence was in 2009, artist Kristen Ramirez, who did a community engagement project. This entailed setting up a phone number where people could call in, both leave stories of the bridge and hear stories of the bridge, as well as several public events, marches, and parades, all in celebration of the Fremont Bridge. Following that, next in 2016, we had a poet in residence, writer Alyssa Washuta, who resided in the Fremont Bridge and created some really beautiful work and writings in response to the site location. In 2017, we had an artist team who actually created an art lighting plan for the underside of the bridge, both the Fremont and a few other bridges within the SDOT ownership. Then in 2019, we worked with a musician, Paula Walsh, who was able to take inspiration again from the Fremont location to be able to compose a new work. And then most recently in 2020, we worked with two artists and had two residencies, one in the university as well as the Fremont, to create graphic works. So graphic novels and comics that were really kind of took the site and were able to tell the story through illustration and words that we were then able to share broadly. And so for this upcoming year, I'll pass it back to Jeremy.
Yeah, thank you, Maya. So this year we are focusing on digital data visualization art. You can see pictured here, we have a piece called Making Visible the Invisible by George LaGrady from 2005. You can see it at the Central Library, downtown Seattle. And for the purposes of this application, when we say digital data visualization art, what we're referring to is artwork that utilizes a graphical representation of information and data as an integral component of the aesthetic intention of the artwork itself. So we'll get back to that a little bit later, but let's get into the nuts and bolts of the residency itself. This call is going to be open to digital artists living in King, Snohomish, Pierce, or Kitsap counties who are able to travel to Seattle for the residency requirement. This opportunity is for individual artists only, and artist teams are ineligible to apply, as well as students under the age of 18 are ineligible to apply. Selected artists for this project will undertake an in-depth exploration of some type of data relating to, or stemming from these bridges, and interpret that information using some form of artistic data visualization. The residency itself includes access to the tower. An artist will be given a key following a safety training session. Artists cannot live in the tower, and anyone who has not completed the safety training cannot go into the tower. However, the artist may use the space as a studio, platform for observing the bridge and its surroundings, or as a home base from which to collect data or engage the community. Early on in the residency process, the artist will be asked to meet with project managers and the office and SDOT representatives to discuss their approach for the residency. In that consultation, the artist will set studio hours. We suggest 8 to 15 hours per week for about 2 to 3 months, and will then propose a culminating project with their public presentation and documentation. The actual artist residency program, or the artist residency itself, will run from June through December 2023. So it has to happen within the boundaries of 2023. Artists may propose collecting their own data as long as the equipment that is required does not cause permanent changes to or damage the bridge facilities in any way, and the installation needs to be easily reversible. So what is done needs to be undone. And a wide variety of data about the bridges already exists, which is why this opportunity is so exciting. The data includes it's not limited to openings per month for quite a long span of time, and things like steel stress test data. All the data, collecting equipment installations, and the use of specific sets of data need to be approved by SDOT. And access to certain data or information might be restricted at SDOT's discretion in order to ensure the safety of staff and ongoing bridge operations. So back to the project presentation and documentation. The residency itself will culminate in a digital data visualization artwork and then a public presentation, which could be held in person or online. The artwork will use data to represent or illuminate some aspect of the bridge or the bridge's history, whether it's a real illustration or metaphorical. The artist will propose and implement these public presentations of their artwork. And those presentations might be screenings, speaking engagements, an exhibition, readings, online, or physical locations will be determined in consultation with the office and SDOT. Where possible, the office will try to provide technical assistance, introductions to community resources, and other information as needed by the artists. Following the public presentation of the work, the artist will provide the documentation of the project to the city as that final project deliverable. It's worth noting that copyright of the material created during the residency remains with the artist. However, the city must be granted a non-exclusive copyright license to use the artwork for non-commercial uses. In terms of budget and timeline, each artist selected will receive $10,000 inclusive of all residency costs, including the project, the presentation, documentation of the work, and any taxes. Payment will be made in installments based off of benchmarks established by the office in consultation with the artist. And our timeline, the application is open currently and it closes at 4:59 p.m. on April 15th. That's a Friday. Once the application period is closed, we will convene a selection panel, which will happen sometime in late April to review the applications. The finalists determined from that first round will be interviewed by the selection panel, and in early May, we'll have that meeting. And then in late May, the artist will be notified, contracted, and we will start working on determining the residency schedule. Then as soon as June, the artist can begin the project following the appropriate safety trainings. In terms of application requirements, we have a statement of interest, approximately 400 words or 90-second audio video clip. This is a place to provide a statement describing your interest in this project and the residency, talk about how you're qualified, what your interests are relating to this project, and what kind of work you create. We also ask for a biographical statement, approximately 500 words or 100 seconds, which replaces the traditional resume and is a place for you to provide the panel information about your background, lived experience, education, or professional experience as well. Then we'll be asking for a general residency proposal. This is just your initial idea for how you might approach the project and what you might create. This will only be 500 words or about 100 seconds of an AV, and should not be a detailed project plan, just a rough broad strokes idea. We'll also be asking for work samples, up to 10 in a variety of formats that you can find the list of formats on the submittable application. Work samples will be accompanied by a work sample identification list so that the selection panel has context about how this work might relate to the residency. We also ask that you indicate which residency location interests you the most, either Fremont University or both or neither, no preference, and try to explain why that one in particular interests you. Then finally, we ask for references for this project, 3 references for people who can speak to your potential to succeed in this residency. The references, however, will only be contacted if you're selected as a finalist in that first round. So now we're going to take a little look at the actual application. You can find the call for funding at the above website, at the Arts and Culture blog for the current calls and funding. You can click this image right here in the middle of the page to go directly to the application itself. There's also a link to go to the submittable application in the text below. Once you get to the submittable application, you'll see something along these lines. Up top, you will see the choice to enter in a written or video submission. Once you check one of these 2 boxes, an entire new section will open up for you to either type in your text or provide a link to wherever you host that audio video format statement. Then we've got the location request along with the work text field, and then a place for your references as well. This is what the work sample page looks like. You can click the button in the middle here, choose file, to directly upload files. I believe you can also drag and drop on the website from your file browser. We ask for up to 10 files in PDF, GIF, JPEG, PNG, standard formats, including movie formats. And then we ask that you provide the work sample descriptions, including the file name, artwork title, year made, and description of how it relates to your proposal. And then what are the selection criteria? So the artist will be selected based on this following criteria. One, adherence to the eligibility requirements, especially the provided definition of digital data visualization art. Next, the quality of concept, design, and narrative of past works. Content and aesthetics that are appropriate for all ages. A demonstrated ability to complete projects on time and within budget. The statement of interest that's relevant to the proposal or relevance of the proposal to the site locations. And then finally, the fit of the proposal with the locations and goals of the program. And I've pulled out some of the text from the call just to illuminate what those goals of the program are. So represent or illuminate some aspect of the bridge or its history, use of the space as inspiration for the artwork or as studio space, and then an in-depth exploration of some type of the data relating to the bridge. And as always, I want to remind you all that the Office of Arts and Culture is committed to reflecting the diversity and cultural richness of our city in its selection of artists and artworks, and all artists of all walks of life are encouraged to apply. So some tips. We ask that you please complete your application at least 24 hours before the deadline if you can. This is to avoid any technical delays or upload times. Things happen, especially when technology gets involved. So make sure to give yourself enough time to get your application in. We recommend that you write your responses if you're doing text responses in a word processor to track word count, and then you can cut and paste it into the application without worrying about your website timing out or losing your work. We also recommend that you have someone you trust review your responses for grammar and typos, and also to look at your work samples and descriptions. I also want to remind everyone that the review process happens fast. So be aware that you might only get 5 to 10 seconds per artwork sample, and things are read very quickly. So we suggest that you try to be clear and succinct whenever possible. And then finally, I want to remind you that these opportunities are very competitive. So don't be discouraged, and please apply again to another opportunity down the road, even if you don't get it this time. So at that, we're going to take a look. See if we've got any questions. If you've got any questions, please type them into the chat, or you can contact me, Jeremy Beliveau, at 206-459-6554 or jeremy.beliveau@seattle.gov. So thank you very much. I'm going to stop screen sharing, and we'll give a minute for folks to type any questions they might have into the chat. No, this is not actually about a mural project. I think you might have gotten some wires crossed there, unfortunately, Daniel. Sorry about that one.
Are we allowed to do verbal questions?
Sure, go ahead. Just one at a time, if you don't mind.
Okay, raise my hand here. Can you elaborate a little bit more on how literal we should interpret the term data? Like, are you explicitly looking for like number of bridge openings or some sort of hard data like transformed into a visualization and art, or could it be more loosely interpreted like the history translated into visualized in some way?
That is a really good question. I would say that the original intention had been to utilize the hard data. For instance, there are spreadsheets upon spreadsheets of bridge openings over time. However, the application is open to interpretation as long as it includes some kind of representation of data about the bridge in a digital format. I would say that it would be definitely reviewable. Does that answer your question? Okay. And then Zorn Taylor is asking, is there a database of data that we can access? There is data available through SDOT. It's not in a singular database. It would be determined what data is available through conversations with SDOT specifically. They have just tons and tons of resources and data available, but I don't believe it's in a singular location.
And I'll just add, it wouldn't be available ahead of time as you're going through the application process, but with the selected artist, then it would be kind of a deep dive in a conversation with SDOT to see like all the kinds of information that they might have to be able to investigate that way once selected and on board.
Excellent. Thank you, Maya.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the audience? Perfect. So Tina is asking if the artist could gather data. Yes, the artist can gather data using the site. However, anything that you would need to, any kind of hardware or equipment that would be installed as part of that data collection would need to be approved by SDOT ahead of time and would need to be fully reversible at the conclusion of the residency. So whatever is done needs to be undone. And Karn is asking if there would be specific contacts at SDOT as resources. Yes, we would connect you with different SDOT contacts to be able to help sort through this data and determine what is available once you get your feet on the ground. Oh, Tina is asking an interesting question about whether the data could be archival data from MOHI, for example, pictures. I know that there's a wealth of visual resources through MOHI and the university. We hadn't discussed using external data sources, but that is definitely something that I could look into. Maya, did you have any idea about that one?
I think using external data could be completely applicable to this project. And so mining information from MOHI or the various kind of public archives could be really insightful to some elements of the bridge.
Yeah, and I would also like to add that it should be something that is in either the public domain or archival. You would need to get some kind of, if you were to specifically use those images in a reproduction through your final project, everything would need to have the proper copyright clearances as well. And then, oh, go ahead, Maya.
I can speak to the next question. The question is the artist in residence in 2020 did a graphic novel, a comic. And so asking how that was displayed, just to know the possibilities. And so from the past artists in residence in this space, it really has varied pretty significantly between both for the type of media as well as the artist preferences. So for the graphic novels, there were actually 2 residences, one in each of the bridge towers. And what we did is we printed those books and then we had a public presentation. And so it was online because of COVID. But then what we did with the printed copies, we then distributed those to everybody who attended that public workshop. And so we were able to kind of showcase that way, as well as being able to distribute the physical book. Other examples, the poet did a public lecture in partnership with a public library, as well as she actually on her own worked with agencies to have that work published. And so what she did for us was the public presentation and the lecture, but then she took that work and actually published it in quite a few different ways following that. And so it really kind of varies based on what the thing is. And if you want to also work as a together with as the two artists together to do something collaboratively or separate if they're very diverse works. And so, but that's something that's just really discussed as part of the contracting process as well with the project manager to determine kind of what that end deliverable is and looks like and how it's presented.
Excellent. Anyone else? Any other questions? All right, well, I think speak now or forever hold your peace. Otherwise, you can email me if you've got any questions that come up afterwards. And I look forward to seeing what comes of this project. Thank you all for joining us. Oh, one last question from Tina. Are we allowed to have projections on the bridge? No, unfortunately. Technically, the only projections that could happen on the bridge need to happen during daylight hours. They can't happen at night due to federal regulations around migratory birds and fish. The lighting residency in the past came afoul of some issues with that. So unfortunately, there is restrictions on what kind of things can be projected or lit around the bridge. All right, and with that, we're gonna conclude for tonight. And thank you all for joining. Have a great rest of your evening. And yeah, we look forward to seeing your applications.